time, weather, and
Audio Jungle.
Welcome to my channel today. I truly appreciate you being here, and I just wanted to touch bases today, and you're going to do a little bit different today. I'm burning some aluminum, as you can see. Now, before I even get started, okay, I'm not an aluminum burning professional. I'm not telling you how to do it. I don't do everything perfectly safe, and if you see something that goes against the grain, I'm not talking about how to melt aluminum. I'm just melting aluminum in my backyard. So before anybody starts whining and complaining about this or that, hey, I'm not teaching you, I'm not telling you how to do it, but I did want to talk about burning aluminum. And it has to do with basically Gresham's Law. Maybe or maybe not you've heard about Gresham's Law. And real quick, basically what Gresham's Law is that if you have two competing currencies in the same market, the one that holds more value is going to disappear. And this really makes sense when you think about silver. Okay? Silver used to be in the currency. And if you walk up to somebody who doesn't know anything about currency, fiat currency, silver, no knowledge of anything, never even heard of Gresham's Law, and you give them 2 quarters and change, 2 pieces of, 25 cents, and one of them just happens to be prior to 1964, and it's 90% silver. The average person is going to pick up the silver and go, I'm keeping this. It's what people do. And then the silver disappears from the culture because it's more valuable. And that is called Gresham's Law. Now, I can remember as a kid, when I was really young, I lived in New York, and I used to walk 4 blocks to the savings bank down the road. And I used to drive the tellers crazy to the point where they told me to stop coming in so often. I was young. I was in my low teens, most likely, and I was collecting coins. And I used to walk up to the store and I used to cull out weak back pennies because they were, disappearing from the scene back then. In the 70s, early 80s, you can still find a significant amount of wheatback pennies. And so I was pulling them out, and if I found silver, but had nothing clicked in my mind because I was more numistically involved, I was always looking for the 1909 VDBS. Never found it, but I was a kid and I was collecting it, and I had all of these things that I would pull out of the coins. And I don't remember pulling out silver, I just remember looking for wheatback pennies. And what you're saying, well, what does this have to do with anything in today's world? I used to go to the bank, great. My point is that I think it was the mid of 1982, the mint quietly stopped making pennies out of, and it's not pennies, it's 1-cent pieces. They stopped making the 1-cent pieces out of copper, and they switched them to a cheaper metal. Not really sure what's in it, I just know that it's extremely cheap. The point being is that when you got your first newfangled penny, 1-cent piece, you probably looked at it and said, this is like not even real. It's so light, it's cheap, it's like monopoly money. Well, Gresham's Law has struck again, and you didn't even realize it. And this goes back to how often our government lies to us, which is the whole point of this conversation. Is before I even get into how Gresham's Law applies to what's going on in the world today, let's just set some groundwork, okay? we go to war as a nation, and what most people don't realize is that it used to be we would have to declare war. But now the United States just goes about its merry way and, somebody dials 911 and the military is off and running and off they go. Where the World Police Force, everybody knows it, we've got bases all around the world. But now with the advent of the death of the petrodollar, and if you don't know what the petrodollar is, I strongly suggest you do a little bit of due diligence on that, because the petrodollar, understanding the petrodollar, explains the culture of warfare for the last 40 years easily. But getting back on topic is the money that we stopped making our coins out of anything of value. Because, and you know this, back in 1913, at the creation of the Federal Reserve, you could get a $10 gold piece and you could go buy stuff, right? It's commerce, that's just the way it works. But today, that $10 gold piece, which used to be able to buy a lot of stuff, today is, if you use the numismatic value of it, it's, I hate to tell you, but it's the gold hasn't gotten more expensive. The dollar has become worthless. And it's so clearly visible in society today in Gresham's law. Is everything that you see today that is more expensive, it's not more expensive. That's not how it works, but that's how you perceive it to be. And my point of this is the dollar is what is losing value. It is not the product becoming more expensive. And under Gresham's law, the coin shortage is just so explainable. For example, you can go on private mint websites today and order bags of copper pennies prior to 1982. Okay, because that's the only time you're going to get copper pennies. Now, why would a mint want to sell me a bag of pennies? A privately owned mint. Well, it's illegal to melt down a penny. Okay, it's illegal. You're not allowed to do it. But if you melt down a penny, what is the value of the materials in that penny? It's worth more than a penny. Or a 1 cent piece. Okay, let me just make it clear. I know the difference between a cent and a penny. I know the historical significance of it. It's like calling a US dollar money. Okay, so don't get all bent out of shape about me saying it's a penny. Yes, I know the United States government has never produced 1 penny. They produced cents. I know it was a thing against the British government back in the day, blah, blah, blah. Don't get lost in the conversation. But the point is that melting down a copper penny prior to 1982 will quickly yield, the last time I looked, you practically double your money. Yeah, well, a penny at a time? Okay, well, what about a nickel? How much is a nickel worth? I'll have to pop that on the screen when I post this video. But a nickel, prior to, I believe, 1984, it had to be made out of a nickel. Nickel content had to be nickel. That's why they called it a nickel. But today, the value of the dollar has declined so much that they can't afford to even make a 1 cent piece out of copper, because there's nothing left to squeeze left in inflation. We don't watch inflation because it's just a slow thing. It's kind of like just putting a metal bolt into the dirt and forgetting about it. Whether you look at it or not, the metal bolt is going to rust. And a dollar is basically worthless today. And Gresham's law kicked in, and that's why we have a coin shortage, and the government lies over that. They can't tell you the reason we have a coin shortage is because the dollar had died. They just lie. Like the Gulf of Tonkin, which was a lie. And 50,000 Americans plus had to die. Same thing with World War I. I've done videos on all of this stuff. World War I was completely started with a lie because J.P. Morgan didn't want to lose its money, the loans that it had with Britain. And in World War I, Britain was ready to surrender practically because they were 6 weeks away from being starved. Okay? It's a pattern.
Time, weather, and...
And once you're gone